Thank you very much for the very warm introduction. And I'm very pleased, based on the title of my presentation, to follow the former Minister of Cyprus as two small states, but also island states, which I feel we have a lot to offer in terms of particularly the future of international relations, which more and more in a globalized world will look to subjects such as cultural diplomacy to define new and innovative ways to be able to deal with the world's problems. Many may say that it's the large and the powerful that set the rules, and in fact that the small or the weak simply should follow the rules that are set by those others. This is the accepted basis of realpolitik, particularly now in this era. The United Nations Security Council veto, which is available to the P5 states, the permanent members, remains a reminder of the institutionalization of this realpolitik situation. While the UN Charter may paint a picture of the construction of a global community through shared values of humanity, the realities of the application of the Charter, when we go to deal with these issues in the Security Council, the realities of this application are too often defined by narrow national interests. But the United Nations General Assembly remains nonetheless a bastion of the principle of one nation, one vote. While many may see this as simply an opportunity to create a system of institutionalized patronage at the international level, the smaller states of the United Nations nonetheless have the opportunity, and I would say even in the modern day an increased opportunity, to create space for consensus, which is often not available to their larger counterparts. Smaller states can be the architects of a culture of cooperation rather than straightforward competition. Smaller states and small island developing states, such as Seychelles, are often the biggest investors in this concept, in building this spirit of a global community. And cultural diplomacy, as championed by the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy, is one of the key tools that I think small states can wield even more effectively than their larger counterparts. Before going further, I think it is important to have a discussion on what constitutes a small state, because it can be difficult to actually define smallness. Population size, gross domestic product, military strength, they all may contribute to definitions of smallness in the international community. One key thing is that it is important to note that most states will at some point conceptualize themselves as being smaller in relation to an issue that they may seem to have less leverage in affecting the outcome. Even a large state can feel like it is small. It would not be an exaggeration. In fact, I've checked, it's a fact. If you look at the population of states, the majority of members of the United Nations General Assembly, more than 50%, have a population of 10 million or less. But the simplest definition of smallness is population. While states with populations with 1 or 2 million citizens may be defined as small per criteria set by the World Bank and the Commonwealth, they set the limit at 1 or 2 million persons. There are small island developing states like Seychelles that have a population of only 90,000 and therefore are even defined as microstates. Small island developing states have faced a particular set of challenges in relation to their major foreign policy priorities. Principal among these has been the fight against climate change. But we have also been at the forefront of addressing issues such as development financing of island states and the problems of debt in island nations. The particular circumstances of island nations places them among those that usually, nonetheless, have the greatest stake in multilateral cooperation. I said yesterday that when I walk into a room for a negotiation, I don't have a nuclear suitcase in one hand and a big trade deal in the other. I walk in as a small country, and we are there to talk on the basis of realities and not just with either, I would say, offering something or with a threat. The particular circumstances of small island developing states in relation to climate change has positioned us on this issue as the world's conscience of what needs to be done. While the road to a binding agreement remains fraught with uncertainty, representatives of island states continue to speak with one voice on the issue. We, as islands, are the voices of future generations which risk losing their heritage if a binding agreement cannot be reached. This role as a voice of conscience for the planet has yet to deliver a concrete outcome. However, no state can ignore this voice without repercussions to their own credibility. As we continue to negotiate a binding agreement on climate change while also trying to define new sustainable development goals as part of the debate on the post-2015 development agenda, the strength of this voice of conscience will be reinforced. A collective conscience built on the efforts of small island developing states provides building blocks that can strengthen the sense of a global community. The experiences of Seychelles as a small island developing state also illustrate a strong commitment to the principle of shared resources. While many countries face security challenges on the basis of their sovereignty or the assertion of their sovereignty over maritime spaces, Seychelles and its nearest neighbor, Mauritius, have jointly agreed to co-manage an extended continental shelf of 394,000 square kilometers. Now, what this means is that we identified an area of ocean which was between our maritime borders, which did not belong to anybody. It was international waters. And we put in a joint application to the United Nations Law of the Sea, and we said we would like to have this territory for co-management. So neither of us has sovereignty, but we both share the opportunities for wealth creation within that zone. So if there is, for example, petroleum found in that zone, we will each benefit from 50-50. Also, we have not drawn a border in that zone. We have simply said this is it's a circular area. We have said in this area, wherever it is found, all the resources will be shared 50-50. So this agreement allows the two countries to share the potential benefits from economic activity in this area on an equitable basis. Both of our countries, Seychelles and Mauritius, we have also been championing the concept of a blue economy or an ocean economy, as we recognize the large part of our future economic potential will be defined by our ability to harness the development potential of our ocean. So this example of resource and revenue sharing between two island nations is one which is in many ways harder for larger, more powerful countries to imagine, but for which it is easier and more practical for smaller states to finalize these practical agreements for mutual benefits. The fact that both countries will also need to tap external expertise to maximize benefit from this co-management also creates incentives for shared technology transfer and capacity building. The management of oceanic spaces in many areas of the world is often the source of geopolitical tension. Seychelles' position in the center of the Indian Ocean also means that it is coveted as a strategic position in relation to logistics in this part of the world. The Seychelles government, since the times of the Cold War, has adopted the principle that all partners willing to cooperate with Seychelles on an equal basis in terms of maritime security is welcome to do so. Our maritime security is by definition based on shared responsibility with neighboring countries and on partnerships with countries that are able to deploy their maritime security capability in our region. While Seychelles' geostrategic position may make it a country that many wish to influence in terms of maritime security, its openness, our openness, and the principles of not favoring the interests of one partner above another means that despite our small size, Seychelles is able to leverage support for wide-ranging maritime security initiatives. This has been widely illustrated in the fight against maritime piracy, where Seychelles has worked with international partners to establish a model of prosecuting prisoners that have been arrested for piracy in Seychelles courts and then transferring them back to Somalia, because unfortunately most of them come from Somalia, to serve their sentences in UN prisons, while also pursuing the finances which are used to finance piracy, both within and beyond Somalia's borders. This model has significantly dented the profitability of piracy. Through the establishment of a regional intelligence and information center relating to piracy and maritime security, Seychelles has also managed to engage a multitude of partners in ensuring maritime security of its own economic exclusive zone and the wider region. This includes many partners that may seem to be having competing interests. One of the biggest challenges for small states is being able to leverage any potential role it can play in terms of geostrategic positioning is obviously the challenge of human capacity. Can a country such as Seychelles, the smallest African state, which only has 10 embassies and a diplomatic staff of less than 100 people, what role can we really play? Sometimes I'm asked this. The challenge of smallness can be offset by efficiency. While many ambassadors of large and influential states can often be subject to the inertia of internal processes of large bureaucracies, smaller states can often react the fastest. While I actually have experiences where a colleague minister has been desperately trying to reach their head of state, by that time Seychelles has taken a policy decision. So by carefully choosing the issues on which small states wish to intervene, smaller nations can have a significant impact both within the UN system and on the basis of bilateral and other multilateral exchanges. Small island states such as Seychelles are also key promoters of regional partnerships as a means of both fostering trade and peaceful development. We are situated within several sub-regional groupings with overlapping memberships, including the African Union, the Southern African Development Community, which is SADC, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, the Indian Ocean Commission, and the Indian Ocean Rim Association. These partnerships allow us, as smaller states, to both benefit from established regional positions and use these regional blocks to bolster potentially difficult negotiating positions, for example, within WTO. Seychelles has many specificities which make its position unique within these organizations. Few other members share the same circumstances. However, this actually strengthens the role of countries such as Seychelles as potential consensus builders. These regional building blocks are critical drivers of further consensus seeking at a global level. To conclude, allow me to give you also some background to the bid that Seychelles is making to become a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for the period 2017-2018. We are bidding for one of the African seats available for that period, and we are currently engaged in discussions with our regional partners for endorsement. If Seychelles is successful, we will become the smallest country to have ever served at the UN Security Council. The doctrine of might is right stacks the odds against us being successful. But within the African grouping of which we are a party, there is a belief which is held very strongly by the states that are part of it, that no state has more rights above the rights of others. There is a belief that we can all contribute, large, small, rich, poor. And not only that we can contribute, but that we must contribute. Otherwise, why have a United Nations of 194 states if each state cannot contribute? We also live in an era where citizens of most countries are not satisfied with listening to just one dominant voice. National interests cannot simply be defined in terms of wins and losses. The increased interconnectivity of the global economy, as well as the enhanced technologies of communication, means that the power of ideas is not restrained by any state's frontiers or even by size. This is an era where every voice needs to be heard. Every voice counts and should be given the space to express itself. We note the momentum continues to build around the reform of the Security Council. The status quo does not reflect the expectations of member states nor of their citizens. And there is a need, for example, to strengthen Africa's representation. The reform will be arduous and there will be many stumbling blocks. But the fact that a call for reform exists and that there is a debate about it demonstrates the role that smaller states can play as defenders of the principles of equity and shared values. There is no debate about the principle of one state, one vote. There is a debate about equity. And this is where small states really can make a difference. I will end with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, where he said, "A small body of determined spirits, fired by an unquenchable faith in their mission, can alter the course of history." I thank you.